Alright guys, it's day 2 of STAAR review, and today we are continuing to talk about proportions, but specifically proportions involving percents and percent change. So let's start by solving basic percent problems. Percent problems can be solved using proportions or equations. You can set up a proportion using the formula below and solve it just like a regular proportion like we did yesterday. You just have to remember that percents always go over 100 and they're going to equal the part out of the whole. Then you can plug in the given values to the proportion and solve for the missing value by doing one of the strategies we reviewed yesterday. Cross multiply and divide, scale up, maybe simplify, but you can solve it using that type of proportion. Another way you can solve percent questions is by using an equation where we multiply the percent as a decimal times the total, and that's going to give us our answer. So I'm going to show you guys how you can do it both ways, and you'll be able to choose which way makes more sense to you. Let's go ahead and look at these two examples. A says the price of a DVD is $24 plus 8% sales tax. What is the sales tax on this DVD in dollars and cents? Now you should remember when we reviewed sales tax, we taught you guys to just multiply. The common mistake is that people would multiply 24 times 8. But remember, we cannot multiply percents. We have to turn them into decimals, which means we have to move the decimal twice to the left, which would give me 0.08, not 0.8, 0.08. So we could solve this question by doing 24 times 0.08, and that's going to give us 1.92. If you don't like the multiplication version, you also could set up a proportion where we put our percent, 8, over 100, because percents are always over 100, and set that equal to x over 24. Then you would solve this proportion using one of the methods we reviewed yesterday, and you would still get 1.92. So whichever way is easier for you is fine. Example B says two stores are having sales on cameras. At store X, all cameras are on sale for 15% off the original price. At store Y, all cameras are on sale for 1/5 off the original price. Which store would you have the better sale price for a camera with an original price of $80? So we're looking for the better sale price, which means the cheapest option. And our camera originally cost $80, so that's our total or our whole. So let's solve for store X by using the multiplication version, where we do 80, our total, times 15% as a decimal. Now if I make 15% a decimal, we move that decimal twice, and it becomes 0.15. If we multiply 80 times 0.15, we're going to get 12. So that means that store X is going to take off $12. Now let's look at store Y. Store Y's deal was that all cameras are on sale for 1/5 off the original price. So here's store Y, and since I have a fraction, let's use a proportion to solve for this. So I'm going to use my fraction of 1/5 and set that equal to x over our original price of 80. Now we can go from 5 to 80, but if you don't know how to go from 5 to 80, you can cross multiply and divide and do 80 times 1, which is 80, divided by 5, and that's going to give you 16, which means that store Y takes $16 off the total. So the cheaper option is going to be whichever store lets us take off more money, which means that store Y would be the better deal. Because if we subtract 16 from 80, that gives us a smaller value than if we subtracted 12. So that's how you solve basic percent questions. Now we're going to look at how to solve percent change questions. Percent change describes the change over time by either an increase or decrease. And next to decrease, I want you to write reduction, because sometimes the questions will use the word reduce or reduction, and that just means decrease. It's going down. So to solve percent proportions, we are going to plug in the values into the formula below, where we still have percent over 100, because percents are always over 100, is equal to the change over the original. And change can be represented by the difference between the new and original values. You should know that difference means to subtract. So to find the change, we're going to subtract our new and original values. So let's look at some examples of what this might look like. Example A says the price of a video game was reduced from $60 to $45. By what percent was the price of the video game reduced? So I want you to underline percent and reduced. Those two words indicate that this is a percent change question. Our price is changing and we're figuring out what percent it changed by. So what we're going to have to figure out is what that percent is. So the percent is my missing value, X, which always goes over 100. Percents are always over 100. And that's going to be equal to the change over the original. Remember, to find change, we subtract our two values. So if we do 60 minus 45, that gives us 15. So our change is 15. And then the original is whatever number comes after the word from. The number that's after from is 60. So our proportion is X over 100 equals 15 over 60. Now we could cross multiply and divide right away, but I'm going to go ahead and simplify 15 over 60. I know that I can divide 15 and 60 both by 15. 15 divided by 15 is 1, and 60 divided by 15 is 4. So now I can replace those values with smaller numbers of 1/4. And now I can cross multiply and divide. 100 times 1 is 100, and 100 divided by 4 equals 25, and that is a percent. So our answer is 25%. Looking at example B, we're going to do the same thing. It says Amanda increased the amount of protein she eats every day from 48 grams to 54 grams. By what percentage, underline percent, did Amanda increase the amount of protein she eats? So again, we have our two key words of percent and increase, which indicates that we are doing a percent change. So we're going to start our proportion with X over 100, because percents are always over 100, equals the change over the original. Now remember, to find the change, we subtract our two values. We're just going to do the bigger number minus the smaller number. And if we subtract 54 minus 48, that gives us 6. And the original is the number after the word from, which is 48. Now again, we can simplify 6 over 48. I can divide 6 and 48 both by 6. 6 divided by 6 is 1, and 48 divided by 8 is 8. So now I can change this ratio to be 1/8 and cross multiply and divide smaller numbers. 100 times 1 is 100, and if I divide 100 by 8, that gives me 12.5% as my answer. All right, the last question we will look at says the price of a television was reduced from $250 to $200. By what percentage was the price of the television reduced? So again, we have reduced and we have percent, which means we're doing a percent proportion. So I got X over 100 equals change over original. To find the change, we're going to subtract our two amounts. Well, 250 minus 200 is 50. And then the original is what comes after from, which was 250. So we can solve this many different ways, but I'm going to simplify just by cutting off the zeros on 50 and 250. Remember, if the top and the bottom number both end in 0, you can cut them off and then see if you can scale over. Well, I can go from 25 to 100 by multiplying 4, which means if I do the same thing to 5 and multiply it by 4, I'll get my answer. And 5 times 4 is 20, so that's going to give me a 20% change. So now you should remember how to solve for percent problems and percent change problems. Make sure you refer back to your notes if you forget.